Hello everyone, I'm Taaka Awori, founder and CEO of Busara Africa, a Pan-African leadership development firm. Welcome to the Leadership in Africa Redefined podcast. This podcast seeks to do two things. One, change the narrative of leadership in Africa, and two, provide concrete strategies and tips for leading in an African context. We do this by interviewing amazing African leaders so that the narrative of leadership in Africa is defined by the best of us, not the worst of us. We share their stories and provide practical suggestions for dealing with the challenges of leading on this continent. We discuss, interrogate, and examine concrete leadership practices that work. We also look at failures that these leaders faced and how they navigated their ways back on track. It's an exciting and empowering space for leaders to thrive and engage. Subscribe to the show to become the leader you have always wanted to be. And if you like the show, be sure you rate it and review it. It helps others to find it. Thanks so much. Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of Leadership in Africa Redefined, the podcast. Today, I am super excited because I have yet again another very special guest with us today, and it's Martin Kalungu-Banda. And let me say something about Martin. I met Martin a couple of years ago when we were asked to facilitate a UN country team leadership retreat together. And you know how it is when you're about to do a piece of work with somebody together, you quickly get online and you Google them. And when I Googled him and read his bio and all the work that he'd done, I thought, wow. And I'll tell you later why I said why when I read quickly Martin's bio. But then I met Martin, worked with him on that retreat. And then I had a deeper wow. And I'll tell you why that second wow came in, Martin. What I saw in you was an African who was deeply aligned with their higher self and their values. And what that ended up looking like in practice was deep wisdom, empathy, vulnerability, but also some serious gravitas. So in many respects, an ability to model the leadership this continent needs. So that was the reason I had my second wow. And I thought then, I need to continue dancing with Martin and his wife into the future. So I'm so glad we've been able to do that. But folks, let me tell you why the first wow came. I'll just quickly give you highlights of Martin's bio. So Martin trains and coaches leaders in business, government, and civil society throughout the world. And as we say in Ghana, he doesn't just do the small thing. Don't be small thing the way he works. So he works with big companies such as Airbus, 3M, the World Bank, Price Waterhouse, Barclays Bank. So all the big boys and girls. But Martin also serves as core faculty member and UK rep of the Presencing Institute, the HSBC Next Generation Development Program, and His Royal Highness Duke of Edinburgh's Commonwealth Study Conference Leaders Program. He's also visiting faculty for the University of Cambridge Institute for Sustainable Leadership and the London Business School, and a fellow of Future Considerations. And now, I'm trying to follow in Martin's footsteps because Martin is also an accomplished author, written 3 absolutely amazing books. Leading Like Madiba, Leadership Lessons from Nelson Mandela is one of the first one. From his experience as advisor to Zambia's president, Mwanawasa, he wrote, "It's how we end that matters, leadership lessons from an African president." And most recently, I think this was your most recent book, Martin, Driftology, how to access life's greatest opportunities by flying on the wings of others. So folks, get on Amazon and start looking for those books. We'll make sure we have a list of all Martin's books in our show notes. So Martin, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Taaka, I am exceptionally delighted to chat with you, to connect with you, to learn from you. And thank you for having me on this program.
Wonderful. I think we'll be learning more from you. But maybe, Martin, give us a highlight. I've read the formal bio, give how we connected, but give our listeners a sense of who you are, however you want to do that, either highlights of your journey to where you are today or something about you so they get a feel for the Martin beyond the formal bio.
Thank you. So the sense of awe that you described when we were invited to collaborate in supporting a UN country office was mutual, because what happened was that when the head of the country team called me to invite me to do this work, he quickly said, and I know who you should work with to deliver on the ambition we have as the UN country team. And he said, I know both of you. You come gifted in different ways, but from my sense of judgment, you will connect. And this person has lived leadership. Now she is passing it on through her work. And he settled me because he was my boss in another life and I could trust his word. So I was coming to work with you in a very, very open way because I believed his word. I believed his sense of judgment. And oh boy, wasn't he right?
Oh, thank you. So it was mutual. So you see that people, you've gotten a feel for Martin. Eh? So Martin, I'm asking him about me. I'm asking him about him, and now he's turned it around to talk about me. So you're getting a sense of the humility in this man. Eh? So Martin, still I'm coming back. Highlights of your journey. Tell us a little bit about you beyond your bio.
So Taaka, I was born in the northern part of Zambia from a mom who tilled the land to fend for the family, and a father who was a head teacher of primary schools, several primary schools, and I received very good Catholic education that today would be only equivalent to those who send their children to private schools, but this was free because we were in the rural part of Zambia that had Catholic schools, and in a way, that's where I began to witness the reality that when you set up good systems in place, everybody looks brilliant. Throughout that time I spent in the Catholic education system, all of us were flying color children. So it couldn't have been just coincidental that clever children came together, and all of them, I mean, the entire class would qualify to go to university. So it is not so much about the natural intelligence that someone brings. It's also the conditions around which you are brought up, you are groomed, that allow your genius to come through. And it's in everyone. And therefore, I could say I accessed quality education, free quality education, in many respects. But I started my career in earnest as a teacher or as a lecturer at the University of Zambia, and I taught philosophy for 1 year, and then I got bored. Taaka, I got bored after 1 year of teaching philosophy. I wanted something slightly much more engaging. So I remember telling my head of department that I had come up with a new course. And then he said, oh, no, Martin, bringing up a course in the university takes longer than that. You haven't been teaching for more than a year. It says, no. It doesn't work like that. You need to be a senior lecturer, a lot of experience.
Yes.
No, I really have come up with something.
Yes.
And then he said, what's the subject you want to introduce? I said, I want to introduce business ethics because I think leaders in business, in government, in civil society need to be ethical to properly do their work. Ethics matters in us as a society realizing our dreams. So, as if to just dismiss me, he said, "Oh, okay. Could you show me the course outline?" I gave him the course outline. He saw the course content, and he says, "Oh, this is fantastic." But now the challenge would be to convince the curriculum development committee to accept that a junior lecturer could just drop by and produce a course. Anyway, to cut the long story short, as a leader, he nurtured me into appearing before the curriculum development committee of the university to the point that the course was accepted. And the following year, I flighted program as business ethics in the University of Zambia for third and fourth year students. And this was because he held me. He held me after his initial doubts. He bought into my story, carried me through, sat next to me during my presentation to the Curriculum Development Committee. And the result was that a course was flighted the following academic year.
Wow. You know, this is why I insisted on hearing your journey, Martin, because you are such an amazing storyteller. But more importantly, I think just the stories you have shared have enabled our listeners to see how grounded you are in our African reality, as you talk about, where you were born, where you went to school, the rural background, the Catholic schools. Many of us can relate to these religious schools, boarding schools, many of us attended. But also in the story you have recounted, the different stories, you are already starting to speak to some of the ethos and principles that guide your thinking around leadership. And what I'm hearing from you, there's two things I've already heard from you. One is this thing about having the right conditions. You talk about the Catholic school providing the conditions that everybody can thrive and succeed. And the second is the example by this, you said he was a professor or the vice chancellor who did...
It was my head of department.
Head of department, eh?
Yeah.
Look, I love the words he used. He nurtured you and he held you. To me, that's already speaking to the kind of leadership that you are mentored around and that you hold up. So maybe that brings me to my first question of you, Martin. You're somebody who has trained and worked with hundreds of leaders across the globe, not just on this continent, across the globe. But if I focus on organizational leaders on this continent, and I know you've worked across so many countries, what would you say are the three biggest blockages they have for practicing what they already know? Because I'm not convinced that the leaders we see in place don't know what to do. It seems something is getting in the way in terms of them putting into practice what they know is good, ethical leadership, empowering leadership. From your experience, what have you seen are some of those blockages?
Taaka, maybe the first one arises from our education system. We are introduced to tools, processes, patterns of thinking, and even our vocabulary. It's all patterned on the Western model, on Western society, on Western culture. I am not saying there is anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that begins to contradict how we have been brought up, how in the home things happen. Community, well-being as a collective is part of our credo as an African continent. It's success is when my community is happy. Productivity should reflect the quality of our connections as a community, as a family. Productivity isn't the primary goal. Productivity is a consequence, or should be a consequence. Because we relate this way, we can produce this and that. But then when we are learning leadership and all these management fads and stories and things like that, all based on a different culture, what happens? We come with a different personality. And this leads me to the second point, that we come as split personalities. I am this when I'm at work, and I am that when I am at home. I even noticed it in the president I served, that because he was a lawyer, accomplished one, and now he was head of state, having been vice president. So you could see this guy who is constantly tough, almost angry all the time at people not delivering.
Okay.
And then I was lucky that he permitted me quite often to be in his family space. And I saw this fluffy, caring, fun-loving human being. And I used to joke with him. I said, if I took a video of you now and blanked your face and showed people, and I said, that's our president, they would say,
I never believe it.
why are you a liar? Why would you like to lie like that? Because they were two different human beings. This fluffy, caring, almost grandfather-like attitude towards the children. Yes, he would be like any parent when situations needed. But that wasn't his mainstay when he was home. And I just wished he brought this a little bit closer together. I want to be the same in the workplace as well as at home. What I care for at home should be the same things I care for at work. It's a false concept that to be a proper manager, leader, you need to come in this almost mask character in order to do the work. And then when you go home, then you become another. That splits our energy and we miss the opportunity to flourish.
Hi folks, hope you're enjoying the show. So have you heard about the Africa Leaders Circle? Our impactful e-learning platform that enables you to grow into the leader you would want to follow? Here is a message to tell you what you need to know.
Are you a CEO, executive director, or HR manager that is looking to build a pipeline of leaders that are ready to step up into management roles? Are you looking for a self-paced learning platform that provides your leaders with quality content and does not take them away from their work for too long? Are you looking for a program that enables your managers to move from knowledge acquisition to demonstrable improved practice? Then look no further. Sign them up for the African Leaders Circle today. The African Leaders Circle is an e-learning platform that gives your managers access to an exclusive community of leaders across the continent and a wide range of strategies and tools to stand out. We do this through online courses, discussion forums, a library of resources, and a personal learning advisor to support each of your managers to maximize their learning on the platform. To learn more, visit our website www.busara-africa.com.
Don't forget to visit our website busara-africa.com to learn more. And now back to the show. This is so powerful, Martin. And there's so much I want to pick in here. And this is why what I really admire about how you conceptualize and how you come at things, Martin, is always the celebration of our indigenous and African culture. Whereas I find so many times we're at war with it. And so because what I hear you saying is these two things. It's one, our education system has produced a disconnect. We have put on a pedestal everything Western, and sometimes that's in contradiction. And I love this thing about, I'm going to remember that quote. So I beg if you hear me saying it again, I'll make sure I cite you around productivity should be a consequence of our relationships, our good relations. And notice how it's usually the other way around. Normally, we're focusing on productivity and we're working to have the good relations just so. Mm-hmm. But the second aspect you bring up about how we're wearing these masks, it's almost like we are disconnected with who we really are. And that's a very vivid example you gave of the president. My question is this. What I often see is actually people grappling with, as the negative, so many aspects of our African culture in the workplace. So in other words, they're saying, no, all this Africa, so many aspects. I'll give you a perfect example. Often folks say to us that traditionally, in many of our diverse cultures, when we think about leadership, it tends to be very hierarchical. So that when we come into the workplace and we're trying to develop more egalitarian cultures and leadership styles, there seems to be a disconnect from that image of traditionally the chief at the top, the oga at the top, and here we are trying to do something different. And so people are like, we need to put out some of these cultural elements to, I love the way you're scratching your head to say, this one I need to pay. So talk to me about that. Have you not heard that? I mean, just on one of the episodes, we've had a conversation about how, because we often think family, in many of our workplaces, culturally, we come in and people start calling their leaders Uncle Martin, Auntie Taaka, Mummy, because that's how culturally we've learned to never call somebody senior to you or older to you by their first name. You need to put something in front of it to show the respect. Then we get into the workplace and we're like, how will I hold so-and-so? How do I manage this thing? How do I hold so-and-so accountable who's been calling me mummy or who's been calling me Auntie Taaka? It's as if almost like the family thing, and yet we're trying to be professional. So tell me about how you have seen that dichotomy, those tensions.
And that for me leads me to what you asked me earlier on as the third point. The failure for us to, by us I mean on the African continent, and this is a big generalization, to make smooth and appropriate transfer from traditional society to modern day society. Obviously, we were interrupted in our path of development by slavery and colonialism, and then we begin to learn new things, but we didn't make a smooth transition, or we have not yet made a conscious transition. And maybe it's not even a transition. We haven't made a proper mixture of the traditional and the current. And I say that because if you want to talk about hierarchy, you have to go back to the bureaucracy created by Max Weber. That's not Africa. So why are we thinking Africans are hierarchical? Yes, we are, but watch how it was played, and it's the genius of what happened. And if we want, let's be that genius and then modernize it in our present day. Yes, I was always bowing and constantly listening and nodding when my father was speaking, and I was never challenged his position. But I had many recourse to do that. I would go to my grandmother and say, I've been trying to convince my father that actually an orange is not actually pink. An orange is literally yellowish. I'm just using a useless example here to demonstrate that. And I really wonder, do you think his eyesight is still good? And then my grandmother would go to her son and find a way of checking things out. And then finally said, no, actually an orange is yellowish. And then my father would come the following day and revise his conversation with me. So the fact that you are talking about a hierarchy, but there were means through which things were resolved. I do recall one moment, Taaka, when we used to have only one pair of shoes, and you used that to go to school, and when you came back from school, you took it off because you needed to for school. The only other time you were allowed to wear a pair of shoes when it was in school time, it was when you were going to church. On this particular occasion, I got a new pair of shoes and I made a mistake, played football in it, and it ripped the wrong way. And
Disaster.
you should have seen, we were sitting by the fire, and my father went to town to tell me, even if I was the son of a teacher, I wasn't going to get a new pair. I was going to be going to school barefoot, because how could I do that when it was just 1 day old in the home as a new pair? And he spoke for a few minutes. And then when he finished, then my mother took over and she said, and those were hard words for a kid, and she said, if your father drops dead because he is working his lungs out to look after us, I'll blame you. Is that the way you reward him, that he works in this way, and all you do when we have bought you a new pair of shoes is to play football in it, and then now look at what has happened? And then the next line she said was, the pair I'm going to buy tomorrow, you repeat, you will never in your lifetime get a new one. She had just
Brilliant.
She had just reversed my father's decision. But she did it in such a way that he still felt he was in charge, he was responsible, and he had admonished me. And the difference. So our traditional system had ways in which things were held. I'm not saying they should be done like that now, Taaka. So all I am saying is that we didn't do a proper transference from that system to modern day system or to Western influenced system. We needed to negotiate that. And I don't have the answers yet. All I'm just saying that, yes, I don't relate to elderly people. It's just Michael. No, they are Uncle Michael. They are Mwansa, Auntie something. So you need to create space for that. We are still shaping with the way of dealing. And in any case, when you had a good society, when you had good relationships, you didn't shy away from speaking the truth you were seeing. So people think because I respect someone, I cannot say the truth I am seeing. You can say. It's just that in some cultures, the process of truth-telling is abusive, is corrosive, is rough. You don't have to be cruel to speak truth.
Oh, I like that. Oh, powerful. Oh, Martin, so deep.
So I can say, and I can give feedback to my boss, and it's tough feedback. It's still loving and caring. Is it tough? Absolutely. When I worked in the presidency, it was part of my job to say how I was seeing things. But I needed to find a way of recognizing he holds an office that represents the whole nation. And therefore, the office deserves some extraordinary level of respect.
Yes.
But I would still spend my evening pacing up and down, and sometimes even saying a little prayer, so that I have the courage to say the little bit of truth I was seeing to somebody so senior, so powerful. But it was my job to say it.
Wow.
So we can say tough things.
Yeah.
Traditionally, we have said tough things.
Yes. But what I love about the example of saying tough things, and you can say tough things without being cool, but just the stories you've shared, what I'm picking up, the key message I'm picking up is our halted. We've not finished that transition, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
But also, just as you were speaking, what came to me is that the way we've navigated the disruption in that transition has been through very much colonial lens, where we often denigrate that which is our tradition. So everything about our culture is bad, it's this, and just the way you tell your stories, I'm hearing that conscious transition is about valuing that which is ours. But from that space of valuing, it's able to say, all right, how can I use the gem of this and apply this in a modern context? And the perfect example you gave is that one. The gem of what your mother did was, how do you still enable it? I mean, it's absolutely brilliant. It's sheer wisdom in that you can see what your father needed in that moment as a leader was to see that my position stood, my position is my feelings, the principle about this issue needs to be communicated to this young man. She was able to do that, but at the same time find a window of compassion to allow you to go with shoes with a way that. So absolutely. Thank you, Martin. So Martin, if I bring us then to, so what needs to happen in our organizations today and I know you said you didn't have answers, but in terms of your experience, what do you see in the organizations that you've worked with that is enabling people to create an enabling environment that enables leaders to create an environment in which leaders are able to practice what they know is the leadership that's needed?
Great question. Again, the first thing I notice is when the leaders themselves wake up to the fact that it's an honor and a privilege and a responsibility that I am leading. And this honor and privilege has a purpose. It's almost going back to the old concept that you are a vessel through which things are supposed to happen. And if the vessel were to think, I am so important, that's why the drink is poured into me or through me, then the whole story changes. And again, if we go back to our traditions, our chiefs and chieftainesses, they were conscious of the fact that life thrust them into this position in order to use them for some end, which was not them. And that's why in many African traditions, what do you find? People went and donated grains and different foodstuffs in the barns of the chief or chieftainess, not because the chieftainess had a bigger stomach than anybody else. It was simply because that was the vessel through which society would feed the less privileged. And therefore, from the chief's barn, the grain would be sent to that household. where they don't have sufficient food. In case of famine, then that grain would be distributed again to society. The chieftainess didn't have a bigger stomach than the rest of the citizens. So leaders have to wake up and say, I am here. One, it's a privilege. Anybody else could have been here. It happens to be that the Lord fell on me. Even if you went for interviews, the Lord fell on you. If you have the most credible qualifications, yes, this time it's you. And then, so what do I need to do? When you ask yourself that question, it will inevitably lead you. I am like a string on a guitar or on a banjo. I cannot play music alone. It's only when you have several strings there, and then there is a hand that strums that. And therefore you start seeing yourself in context. And therefore you bring yourself to your organization, to your community as a part of. But life in this particular instance trusts you with this thing, with this role, with this responsibility. But to play the music, you need other strings. And that is what gives a leader a natural sense of humility. But if you reverse that, then everything else are meant to serve you. You lose the thought. Everything else are meant to serve you. Yeah, I saw how in some systems, one of the quangos, or if I may say, the government created conglomerates.
Yes.
There was even a lift in this building which was designated for the CEO. It means you are now tilting the system to serve you, rather than you being there to animate, to inspire other strings to play the beautiful game.
But so, this is so powerful, because the whole concept around you are there in service of a bigger purpose is, I can just see how that mindset enables you to always remember, manage your ego, remember that it's not about you, it's about that purpose. And I'm so glad you provided the example of that government institution, because then maybe my last question would be around, I can imagine in an organizational space, private sector or NGO, you can come in with the idea of, I'm here in service of a bigger purpose, and hold to that. But particularly in our government space, in our political space, where the system and culture has turned itself upside down from how it was culturally or traditionally to being all about the person. What advice would you give somebody who wants to enter politics in service of the people to hold true to that vision and mindset when they enter this space that's upside down?
I didn't become a politician. I served politicians when I was invited to serve our third president in Zambia. But the advice I was given is the same piece of advice I would give to someone. This person said to me, Martin, when you go into that job, it will often feel like you are very powerful. And it will also come across as if you are very knowledgeable and you are the source of knowledge and wisdom, because people will be looking forward to learning from you. If you can only remember that it is the office you'll be serving that has all these trappings of authority and influence, because it is designed to be used to serve wider society. If you can remember that. And they exaggerated the point. They said, actually, if a goat, the animal, goat, was to be sworn in the manner you will be sworn in as an advisor to the president, it would have the same authority and influence. So just remember, it's not about you. But as I said earlier on, it happens to be that you are the one who is going to do this. So go there and connect to the bigger intention. The presidency is meant to serve the entire country, but more so, the presidency is meant to shine light on the weaker members of our society. Don't lose that. And in order for you not to lose that, they said, just do normal things from time to time. So when you are at the airport, don't go to the VIP side. Go and queue like anybody else and lift your bags from the car and push them on the trolley and check it like anybody else. It will ground you from time to time that you are human. Because the trappings that are meant to help you be efficient are also the things that make you lose sight of what you are there for. So, in a way, Taaka, when you want to go into politics, it's because you believe that power can be used as a force for good. But it's not a force for good for those who are already privileged. You are actually entering that space with an option for the poor, for the weaker members of society. Yes, you'll be serving the business community. Yes, you'll be serving everyone. But what needs you, and why I think people must enter politics, it's because there are many millions of people whose livelihoods and well-being could be 1,000 times better than it is now. That's their job. It's not serving those who are already well off. We are missing the point. Anybody can do that.
Yes.
It's easier bit.
Powerful. Whoever that was who gave you that advice was absolutely brilliant. That was such deep wisdom. The connect with the intention of why you are there. And this thing of around from time to time do normal things, because the trappings of the office that are supposed to make you more efficient can actually disconnect you, not only with your purpose, but with those you are there to serve. You just simply forget.
Absolutely.
So, Martin, I could speak to you forever because the brilliance just keeps coming. If you see the amount of notes I've taken, you are truly, truly amazing, Martin. Thank you so much for being that which you describe, a vessel through which that inner wisdom that we all need to hear about leadership can come through. So, my brother, I'm deeply honored. Thank you for joining us.
And thank you for this privilege, but also thank you for bringing to life the book that is looking at leadership on the African continent. The only thing I would blame you for is that you gave me 2 sleepless nights because I kept reading, and I wanted to make sure that I read the book in as short a period of time as possible. I am privileged to have been invited to chat with you.
Oh, thank you so much. I am honored too. Oh, Martin, be well, man. Take care, huh?
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye for now.
Hello, wonderful leader. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the podcast. I learned a lot, and I hope you did too. If you want more of the lessons, experiences, and nuggets for effective leadership, join our amazing platform for leaders, the African Leaders Circle. Learn more at www.busara-africa.com. And if you liked the show, don't forget to subscribe and share with other amazing leaders. See you soon. Ciao.